The wax from the single candle on my cake had completely melted into a sad little puddle over the vanilla frosting. I was turning 66, and outside my living room window, the rain was gently tapping against the glass. My phone had been dead silent all day, except for an automated email from a department store wishing me a happy birthday. I had waited patiently for a call, a quick text, or even a rushed visit from my son, Nolan. None of that happened. Heartbroken and exhausted, with a lump in my throat, I picked up my phone. I typed out a text to him, pouring out how much it hurt that he'd forgotten my birthday. I hit send and just stared at the glowing screen in the dark kitchen. The reply came in less than 5 minutes, but it wasn't from my son. It was from Vanessa, his wife, replying from his phone. "We're better off without you. Don't contact us again." I blinked, reading the words over and over to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. But the thing that truly shattered the illusion I'd held on to for years was the tiny notification that popped up a second later. Nolan had liked the message. He left a little thumbs-up icon right beneath his wife's insult. Like my existence and my pain were just a minor annoyance. That little icon should have destroyed me. Instead, it brought absolute clarity. For over a decade, ever since my husband passed away, I had confused financial obligation with family love. I was the fixer, the one who paid off the emergencies and the debts, the one who conveniently disappeared when they wanted to celebrate on their own, but was always expected to be right there to open my wallet. I didn't argue. I didn't cry or beg for an explanation. I just went into my contacts, blocked both their numbers, and set the phone down on the table. The gravy train was about to come to a screeching halt. The clacking of my laptop keys broke the silence in my dining room. There were no rage-fueled social media posts, no dramatic speeches rehearsed in front of the mirror, just a bank login screen and my security code. For years, Nolan and Vanessa assumed the money funding their comfortable lifestyle came from an old trust fund my late husband had set up for Nolan. They never actually read the paperwork. They never realized that the sole owner of every single cent and every account was me. Evelyn Hayes. I poured myself a cup of black coffee and got to work. First, I canceled the automatic bi-weekly transfer that covered their mortgage. They always joked that the bank just magically took care of it. Next, I tracked down the authorized user credit cards. They were extensions of my own credit lines. Vanessa used them for her spa days, designer clothes, and dinners at restaurants neither of them could afford on their actual salaries. With 3 clicks, all the supplemental cards were reported as lost or stolen and voided. I didn't feel any malice doing it, just a profound sense of peace. They had always treated me like a backup plan, an invisible ATM that solved problems before they even realized there was a problem. I remembered the last time I saw them. Vanessa didn't even say hello when she walked into my house. She just demanded I watch their dog while they took off for the weekend. I checked the statements one last time. I canceled the payments for their private country club and the premium health insurance I kept in their names. I didn't take a single dime back. I just stopped being the invisible foundation holding up their castle of illusions. I shut the laptop. The weekend was just getting started, and the real world was about to come knocking at their door. The next morning, sunlight caught the dust motes floating in my living room. I woke up early, feeling a lightness in my shoulders I hadn't felt in years. My first goal for the day had nothing to do with finances, but with physical boundaries. For a long time, My house had essentially become a free storage unit for the junk Nolan and Vanessa didn't want cluttering up their own place, but couldn't bring themselves to throw away. I walked into the guest room. It was packed with boxes of old clothes, seasonal decorations Vanessa made me store, and accent furniture that didn't fit her new aesthetic. I grabbed some heavy-duty trash bags and started packing it all up. I didn't break or ruin anything. I just boxed it up for donation. A local charity arrived a couple of hours later with a box truck and hauled absolutely everything away. The room was empty, clean, and for the first time, ready for me to actually use. As the truck pulled away, I pulled out my planner and looked up the number for a reliable locksmith. Nolan had a key to my house, a privilege he used to waltz in unannounced whenever he needed to raid my pantry or drop off his dog. The locksmith showed up at noon and rekeyed both the front and back doors. The metallic clink of the new keys dropping into my palm felt like a little symphony. I wasn't setting a trap or out for revenge. I was just securing my sanctuary. They had made it perfectly clear they were better off without me. I was making sure that separation was respected on every possible front. By late afternoon, I curled up on the couch to read a book. Monday was right around the corner, and with it, their inevitable collision with reality. The first sign of the fallout came Saturday night. I was putting together a simple dinner for myself when my phone screen lit up on the kitchen counter. It was an unknown number. I let it ring. 10 minutes later, a different number. Then another. In less than an hour, my voicemail badge showed 15 new messages. I knew exactly what was going down. I opened my banking app just to confirm my suspicions. In the declined transactions section, there were 3 back-to-back hits. Nolan and Vanessa were trying to pay the bill at The Monarch, a ridiculously overpriced downtown steakhouse where they love to eat every Saturday. The card they kept trying to swipe was the platinum extension I had deactivated 48 hours ago. I listened to just the first voicemail. It was Nolan, calling from a friend's phone. His voice lacked the casual arrogance he usually used to brush me off. He sounded tense, frantic, and clearly embarrassed. "Mom, there's an issue with the cards. Looks like the bank locked our accounts by mistake. Pick up. I need you to authorize a charge. The manager is waiting." I deleted the message without a second thought. There was no bank error, and I certainly wasn't going to swoop in and save them from the humiliation of explaining why their plastic was suddenly useless. I turned off my phone and poured myself a glass of red wine. I knew the embarrassment at the restaurant was just the tip of the iceberg. The first of the month was just days away, bringing the mortgage and their car lease payments with it. I spent the rest of the night in perfect peace while they scrambled to scrape the bottom of their pockets. Sunday morning, my front doorbell rang with an urgency that bordered on aggressive. I was watering my indoor plants when I heard the frantic pounding on the heavy wood door. I walked unhurriedly to the side window and nudged the curtain aside just an inch. Nolan and Vanessa were standing on the porch. He was red-faced with frustration, aggressively shoving his old key into the new lock over and over. Vanessa was glaring out at the street, arms crossed, clearly pissed off that her Sunday morning crisis hadn't been instantly resolved. When they finally realized the key wasn't going to turn, Nolan started pounding on the door with his knuckles. "Mom, open up. We know you're in there." I sighed, set the watering can down, and walked over to the door. I didn't swing it wide open. I just undid the deadbolt and opened it a crack enough to look them in the eye, but keeping my foot firmly planted behind the door. "Why did you change the locks?" "What the hell is going on with the bank?" Nolan demanded, launching right into his grievances without even asking how I was. Vanessa peeked over his shoulder. I looked at both of them with a calm that seemed to disarm them for a split second. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't bring up the text message or demand an apology. I simply reached over to the entryway table, picked up a small cardboard box where I'd gathered their mail and a few forgotten belongings, and passed it through the gap in the door. "I was asked never to contact you again," I said, my tone perfectly neutral and polite. "I'm respecting your wishes." Before Nolan could stutter out a response or Vanessa could even scowl, I shut the door firmly. The click of the deadbolt locking into place was final. The knocking stopped. The crushing weight of reality was finally starting to sink in. First thing Monday morning, I sat at my desk to handle the last major loose end. The luxury SUV Vanessa drove, a brand new European import, was leased in my name. I had been making the $900 monthly payments under the excuse that she needed a safe vehicle for running errands and keeping up appearances with her friends. I called the dealership. The process was surprisingly quick. I told them I wanted to terminate the lease early. As the primary name on the contract, I had the right to surrender the vehicle, paying only the early termination fee, a very small price for my ultimate freedom. The rep told me they'd send a tow truck to pick up the SUV from the registered address that same afternoon. A few hours later, a neighbor I was friendly with texted me that a flatbed truck had parked in front of my son's house. Apparently, Vanessa had stormed out, screaming at the tow truck driver and threatening to call security. But the driver just showed her the termination paperwork with my digital signature. There was absolutely nothing she could do. She had to hand over the keys. That same evening, I opened my laptop and started browsing flights. I had never traveled just for fun. Every spare dollar had always gone toward Nolan's projects. I booked a first-class ticket to Carmel by the Sea in California. As I paid with my own credit card, I realized how little I cared about the absolute chaos unfolding at their house. It just wasn't my problem anymore. My only responsibility now was to myself. The next time she needed a ride, she was going to have to pay for it out of her own pocket. The social fallout didn't take long to hit. Over the course of the week, my phone started ringing again, but it wasn't Nolan. It was extended family and mutual friends. The first to call me directly was Diane, my late husband's sister. I answered casually, as if nothing had happened. "Evelyn, what on earth is going on?" Diane asked, her voice a mix of burning curiosity and slight concern. "Vanessa has been calling half the family saying you've completely lost it. She says you cut off their accounts and repossessed her car overnight. They're telling people your age is catching up to you and you've lost your mind." I let out a soft chuckle. Vanessa's lies were so predictable, just a desperate scramble to save face. I didn't get defensive or try to explain the years of disrespect and financial abuse. I knew that when you over-explain, people think you're lying. "Diane," I said, my voice steady. "On my birthday, they sent me a text saying they were better off without me and told me never to contact them again. Since I'm a woman who respects her son, I gave them exactly what they asked for: total distance. Their finances are strictly their own problem now." There was a long silence on the line. Diane, who knew exactly how my son and daughter-in-law spent money, connected the dots instantly. She didn't need to see bank statements to know the truth. "I see," she finally replied, her tone shifting from concern to deep respect. "Good for you, Evelyn." We hung up. I knew Diane would make sure the real story made the rounds just as fast as Vanessa had tried to drag my name through the mud. The gossip burned out almost as quickly as it started. My reputation remained spotless, while their lavish lifestyle was crumbling for everyone to see. 2 weeks had passed since I shut off the financial faucet. I was at the local farmer's market, picking out fresh fruit, when I heard heavy, fast footsteps coming up behind me. It was Nolan. He was wearing the same clothes he probably had on yesterday, and his usually cocky posture was replaced by a mix of exhaustion and barely contained anger. "You blocked me," he snapped without even saying hello, stepping in front of the apple bins to cut off my path. "You took Vanessa's car. You canceled our cards. And now the bank is threatening foreclosure. What kind of mother does this to her own son over a misunderstanding on a birthday?" I kept inspecting the fruit, picking up a bright red Honeycrisp and placing it in my basket. I didn't feel that familiar spike of anxiety that used to hit me whenever he got mad. "It wasn't a misunderstanding. Nolan," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "It was a very clear statement." He scowled. "Vanessa was just stressed out. She typed that without thinking, and I accidentally liked it when I picked up my phone. You don't ruin our lives over a typo." I handed a $5 bill to the vendor before answering. "I haven't ruined anything. You are both grown adults with full-time jobs. If you can't afford your mortgage, the country club, and your luxury cars on your own salaries, that is something you need to figure out. You told me you were better off without me. I'm just letting you live that reality. That's our money. It's Dad's trust fund." He raised his voice a little, trying to intimidate me. I adjusted my purse on my shoulder. "That's your biggest mistake. Your father never set up a trust fund. He left everything to me because he knew I'd take care of the family. And I did, right up until you decided I was disposable." I turned and walked toward the market exit. I left him standing there, facing the consequences of his own actions for the very first time in his life. Months went by, and the silence became my favorite companion. Life in my house settled into a wonderful new rhythm. I turned the old guest room that used to hold Vanessa's junk into a small art studio. I had wanted to pick up watercolor painting for years, but I always put everyone else's needs ahead of my own. Now, my afternoons were spent surrounded by canvases, brushes, and classical music. Through the grapevine, I heard how my son's life had drastically downsized. Without my money constantly bailing them out, reality had hit them hard. They had to rent out their big, expensive house and move into a much smaller apartment on the outskirts of town. Vanessa had to get a retail job at a boutique, kissing her days of boozy brunches and endless shopping sprees goodbye. Nolan had to start picking up overtime and stop pretending he was a hotshot entrepreneur. What surprised me most was how little I felt when I heard the news. I didn't feel triumphant, but I didn't feel guilty either. It was just the natural order of things restoring itself. They had been living a fantasy on my dime, genuinely believing their success was self-made, and my presence was just a burden. My friends noticed the change in me. I looked more rested. I smiled a lot more. And I had even updated my wardrobe. The constant, gnawing stress of checking my bank balances to cover my son's overdrafts was gone. I had taken back total control of my resources. But more importantly, I had taken back my self-respect. The woman who kept her head down just to keep the peace had been left behind on that forgotten birthday. It has been exactly 1 year since that 12-word text message. Today is my 67th birthday. I'm not sitting in my dining room watching a candle melt in the rain, and I'm not waiting for my phone to ring. I'm sitting on a patio in Carmel, looking out at the Pacific Ocean, holding a cup of coffee in one hand and a good book in the other. The California sun is warming my face, and the sound of the waves is drowning out any negative thoughts. A few days ago, a letter showed up in my mailbox back home. It was from Nolan. The words were carefully chosen, talking about how tough the last year had been, and how he hoped that someday we could patch things up, casually dropping a hint that they were behind on a major bill. I read it once, folded it up, and tossed it into a desk drawer. If we ever decide to speak again, it will be on my terms, and money won't be the bridge between us. But not today. My late husband used to say that you only realize the true value of things when they're gone. I always thought he was talking about himself, but now I know he meant my own effort. By walking away from the people who devalued me, I didn't just pull their financial safety net. I took away the version of me they always took for granted. I pushed myself out of the chair and walked down to the beach. The cold water washed over my bare feet. I didn't get the birthday I wanted last year, but in exchange, I got the greatest gift life could offer: my freedom. Evelyn Hayes is no longer the invisible mother. She is the master of her own destiny. And sometimes, the greatest act of self-love is simply locking the door and letting the silence speak for you. Sometimes, we spend years confusing being useful with being loved. We think that if we just fix enough problems and give everything we have, we'll eventually be valued. But the truth is, genuine respect and affection don't require you to be a full-time lifeguard or an ATM. Learning to quietly set boundaries and walk away isn't an act of revenge or selfishness. It's the ultimate act of self-respect. Because when you stop carrying the weight of the world for people who only want you around when it's convenient, you finally have your hands free to build and enjoy a world of your own.